In other news, a week from now, the leaders of the two Koreas will meet in the demilitarized zone. In the build-up to that crucial meeting, the two sides today opened up a hotline between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. South Korea's presidential office said that a successful test call had also been conducted. The call connected Seoul's presidential Blue House and Pyongyang's powerful State Affairs Commission.
전화 연결은 매끄럽게 진행되었고 전화 상태는 매우 좋았습니다. 마치 옆집에서 전화하는 듯한
The first call between Kim and Moon is expected to take place before they meet face-to-face next Friday. South Korean officials added that the hotline will help facilitate dialogue and reduce misunderstanding during times of tension, a scenario that hasn't been uncommon on the Korean peninsula in the past. The hotline will be maintained after the summit as well. The venue of the much-touted meeting on the 27th of April is the Peace House located in the demilitarized zone of South Korea's Panmunjom, the site that separates the two Koreas. So what exactly does this hotline, the meeting between Kim and Moon, and of course that possible meeting between Kim and Trump really mean? To help us sort of break down the situation, I'm joined on the broadcast tonight by Andre Abrahamian. He's a fellow with the Griffith Asia Institute and an expert on South Korea. He's joining us from Palo Alto in California. Atul Aneja, the Hindu's China correspondent, joins us from Beijing. And with us from Boston, Massachusetts, is the American writer and former intelligence officer Glenn Carl. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you all for taking out the time. Andre, if I could come to you first, how significant is the establishment of this hotline between Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in?
It is fairly significant they've established this hotline, but only as a part of this broader package of interactions that the North and South Koreans have been working on. There would have been ways for the two leaders to get a hold of each other fairly quickly anyway in the last couple of months, but I think the symbolism of having a direct line, so to speak, is quite important.
Sure. Glenn, how is the United States looking at the way the two Koreas are approaching this rapprochement? There is conversation that is going on. Does this make President Trump and his White House happy to see that despite still, not a lot of clarity on whether or not that meeting is going to take place between Kim and Trump, this meeting seems to be on track?
Well, I think that Trump and the administration would probably claim credit for the movement and attribute the hotline and the upcoming summit to the pressure that Trump has put on, and he would say in response to the North Korean missile tests and nuclear program. How does America feel about it? I think we have to focus more on the foreign policy and political classes. I think the general public is largely unaware of the permutations and subtleties of South Korean policy. There is, I think, grudging acknowledgement that the summit that Trump will have and the one coming between South and North Korea are positive steps, with skepticism that as full an agreement is possible as Trump is and North Korea are hinting. North Korea has been more transparent, actually, or consistent, at least with its traditional positions with regard to how it defines denuclearization, and Trump has, as usual, dealt in headlines and grandiose claims so far.
Right. We'll come to that meaning, conundrum as far as denuclearization goes in just a bit. But Atul, if I could come to you next, how is Beijing reading the tea leaves, so to speak?
Well, Beijing is obviously pleased with what it sees, because for Beijing, if you denuclearize North Korea, that feeds into its largest strategic objective of putting pressure on the United States, which is basically its concern there is less justification for the United States to keep its forces in the Asia-Pacific in case North Korea denuclearizes. And second thing is that if there is a resolution on the North Korean crisis, that means that China retains North Korea as a buffer to South Korea and the forces behind, which would be Japan and the United States. So it would be a win-win for China if these talks, which are in the very preliminary or the developments are in the early stages, no doubt promising, were to yield some positive results. So obviously China would be a backer of a peace process in North Korea at this point in time.
Fair enough. Stay with me, gentlemen. Before we go any further, let's remind our viewers that it's just about a week to go for that summit between South Korea's Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un of the North. The hotline, of course, is now connecting the two of them. The two leaders may even be inclined to flesh out the details of what they might end up discussing, and crucially, what each side means by denuclearization. That big fat word could lift or sink not only the Moon Jae-in-Kim summit, but also Kim's possible date with Donald Trump in May or June. The online dictionary leaves no doubts at all on what denuclearization means, defining it to ban or remove nuclear weapons, to eliminate or reduce their numbers, to forbid their building or deployment. But is this what Kim Jong-un also accepts? Nobody knows for sure, and while the issue is probably being fleshed out behind the scenes, at least in public, there's no clear clarity on where exactly all of this is going. Now let's take a look quickly at either side's take on denuclearization so far. For the US, it means complete, verifiable, irreversible dismantling of the North Korean nuclear program. This has been the clear and consistent stance since 2006. It means that the North's nuclear facilities can't be reactivated. Independent observers would monitor dismantling of nuclear facilities, regular inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Kim Jong-un, on the other hand, has never talked about ending his country's nuclear program at all. So definitely that is a big question mark that remains on the meaning, so to speak, of the word denuclearization. Andre, if I could come to you on that note, do you see this as a possible problem, that the word denuclearization seems to be meaning different things to different people, and all of them are involved in this very important summit?
Sure. A lot of people have pointed out that the North Koreans continue to talk about denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which for them means the removal of the U.S. nuclear umbrella, and implicitly the removal of U.S. troops from South Korea. And the U.S. talks about denuclearization of North Korea. Those are obviously quite different things. It is very hard to imagine. Right now, a number of the leaks have said that North Korea is prepared to go for complete denuclearization, and they're not asking for the removal of U.S. troops, and they understand that joint exercises between the U.S. and South Korea, their militaries will continue. It's hard to believe that they're not lining up some major requests for the things that they've said they're going to do. As yet, we haven't really heard what those are, and we haven't really heard American officials talk about what they're prepared to give up. And so those are two really, really big unknowns that we need to keep an eye on.
Atul, would you agree that these are big unknowns and areas that are going to require more, let's say, clarity? Because right now it seems that there's a lot of reading between the lines that's been going on.
Well, I don't see the Americans being satisfied with anything less than complete elimination of nuclear weapons and nuclear missiles from North Korea. From the North Korean perspective, look, he has certain examples before him. Countries which had sort of removed their weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein did it, he was knocked out. Gaddafi, around 2007, gave up his nuclear weapons, again regime change in Libya. So he's going to be very concerned that if he removes his nuclear weapons, that is denuclearizes, which would be the US demand, then how does he ensure regime security or the security for his country? And therein comes the very important conversation which might be going on between the North Koreans and the Chinese. Because unless the North Koreans have a security umbrella coming from China, I don't see them fulfilling the wishes of Donald Trump or the Americans. Now, you go to the next level. Does China have enough nuclear wherewithal to give North Korea nuclear umbrella? Perhaps not, because the Chinese arsenal is also not too large. Which would mean that if North Korea were to get security guarantees as a condition for denuclearizations, I would suspect the Russians would be somewhere in the picture as well. So unless these various elements come together, I don't see the end results, which is denuclearization of North Korea taking place. So the point is that we're going to start the talks, most probably. And these will be the elements of the conversation in the end. How do you ensure regime security when it denuclearizes? And therein it has to be probably a six-party talk format will have to be involved, because there will be more than one player who will be involved in satisfying both ends.
Sure.
Early process, good beginning possibly, but long way to go. Okay,
and the funny thing is, the theme that I'm getting from all three of you is cautious optimism, but then that's really not, Glenn, something that one can associate with the US president. The word cautious, at least, optimism might be something altogether different. As we're leading up to next Friday and the possible meeting between Kim and Trump, is the worry also that the United States president and his Twitter happy fingers might end up doing something, might derail the process altogether?
Oh, there's a tremendous possibility, a risk that occurs, since on a daily basis, and that's literally a statement, Trump will tweet something that undercuts a policy that he apparently had supported and advocated the day before, or that some part of the policymaking bureaucracy has spelled out. The most recent glaring example, of course, is when the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, announced policy sanctions on that would be added against North Korea on Sunday, and then was undercut hours later. So certainly that is a risk. I think, though, that there is a strong incentive from Trump's perspective to declare victory in some way. So I can see, since he doesn't subscribe, adhere, or understand or support all of the above traditional American post-war policies, I could see him cutting a deal in which declarations or a freeze of North Korea's program and a pledge to denuclearize, left to be defined, in exchange for the recognition of North and South, an end of the war, and a reduction in the U.S. forces would allow Trump to declare a dramatic victory and peace in our time kind of thing.
Sure, and it seems that is the end game for the president. I think he wants to definitely say that he has been the master architect of everything positive that comes out of this, if there is something positive to be achieved from all of what's going on. We'll have to leave it at that for now, gentlemen. Thank you all three, Andre, Glenn, Carl, and of course Atul and Aja, for taking out the time to speak with us this evening on WION Fineprint.